welcome back to the Rundown. And we're still focusing on Israel's planned annexation of some West Bank settlements. That is a process supposed to begin on July 1st. And today saw a meeting, as we reported, of alternate Prime Minister and Defense Minister Benny Gantz with top security chiefs to prepare for what may come next week, and of course, well beyond that. Well, for more on that and other issues, we're joined by a colonel in the Israeli Military Reserves, Dr. Eran Lerman. He is the former Deputy Director of Foreign Policy and International Affairs at the National Security Council, which was, of course, part of the Prime Minister's office. Eran, thank you for joining us. Let me just start. We heard today a very explicit threat from the spokesman, or certainly one of the spokesmen of Hamas in the Gaza Strip, warning the consequences of annexation. In your estimates, kind of risk assessment, how viable is that threat? What are the real chances that we'll see an upsurge of either terror or disturbances, unrest, if this annexation goes through?
Well, Hamas have their own calculus of putting pressure on Israel for their own interest. But right now, there's an ongoing process. There's an open discussion looking towards the future. And there are these suitcases with Qatari money that keep Hamas functioning vis-a-vis the Palestinian population in Gaza. There's a serious question of their capacity to deal with the corona crisis. There's too much interaction going on for them to take that level of risk. So I can assume there will be an uptick in protests, maybe some letting off of steam, so to speak. But at the end of the day, Hamas, the reason Hamas is not firing on Israeli target is not because they've recently read Herzl and found out that he was right, but because there is an equation now of cost-benefit analysis and deterrence that has kept them in place. And that works also for all the noises coming out of the Palestinian Authority. There's a difference between the noises you make before a decision is made and the risks that you would be willing to take after it happens.
Right. I want to also look at another matter report today that Yossi Cohen, the head of the Mossad, met secretly, now exposed with King Abdullah of Jordan, who has spoken out most...
If you know about it, it wasn't that secret.
Not that secret. It was when it happened, the day of. But this is a familiar role for Yossi Cohen. But King Abdullah, perhaps the most outspoken Arab leader against the annexation. And, of course, Israel's ties with Jordan are key. How much at risk is the Israel relationship with Jordan if annexation goes through, and especially if it includes the Jordan Valley?
Well, there's a couple of paradoxes here. Of course, heads of the Mossad have been the go-betweens with the Jordanian leadership for literally generations, and carried out all sorts of delicate missions at complicated moments. And clearly the Jordanians know how interconnected their future is with Israel's future. Oh, it's energy, it's water, it's security, it's stability. There's a limit beyond which they would rather not go. On the Jordan Valley, there is, I believe, a deep difference between the position they are bound to take, and they will call the ambassador for consultations, and they will take certain measures maybe to limit the economic interaction with Israel or whatever. They need, because of the neighborhood they live in, they need to sound as if they're very unhappy. But do they really want the IDF out of the Jordan Valley? That would mean actually easy access from a Palestinian entity to Jordan and back. That would be a huge temptation for every terrorist organization, for the Iranians, for whoever, to once again destabilize Jordan so it can be used the way it was used before 1970. And it would also create the danger that if things go wrong in Ramallah, the problems will seep over to the east side of the river. So an Israeli presence in the Jordan Valley is absolutely vital for Israeli security Jordanian security and Palestinian stability. And therefore, I think there's a huge difference between what the Jordanians really want and the position they feel obliged to take.
All right. Now, since you mentioned the Iranians, just stay with us, Eran, because earlier today, Prime Minister Netanyahu addressed the inauguration of the Israeli Air Force's new pilots, and he spoke about Iran's aggressions in the Middle East. Let's listen.
We're continuously working against attempts by Iran and its proxies to build a military presence in Syria. The Iranian army must leave Syria. Secondly, we are acting against our enemy's attempts to develop precision missiles in Syria, Lebanon, and other fronts. Third, and most importantly, we will not allow Iran to acquire nuclear weapons.
And briefly, Eran, this, of course, comments coming after, again, reports of an alleged Israeli airstrike on Iranian targets in Syria. Some reports as many as 7 killed. It seems as if Israel is certainly not letting the annexation get in the way of continuing this campaign against Iran in Syria.
The priority is very clear. The situation vis-a-vis the application of Israeli law, I would leave the term annexation aside, has to do with the Trump plan and the opportunity it generates, which is an important opportunity. But the main challenge for Israel remains the Iranian nuclear project and Iran's proxies, which are placed in order to provide cover for that program if and when we will have no other choice but to go after it. So Iran's presence in Syria is part of that equation. It is in serious trouble right now. We see signs of a crack within the Syrian leadership. We see clear indications that Russian and Iranian positions do not cohere. In Libya, the Iranians are nosing up to the Turks, whereas Assad and the Russians are firmly with Egypt on the other side of a deadly divide. So our pressure on Syria is adding to the cost-benefit analysis for Bashar al-Assad and his Russian sponsors, basically saying the cost of entertaining the Iranians on your soil is going to rise, while the benefits will continue to diminish.
Right.
And this is our purpose.
Well, let's see if that message is getting through in Damascus. Eran Lerman, thank you for joining us.